Hi, I'm Dr. Gwen, and my channel is all about empowering the neurodiverse community. In this episode, Dr. Debra Kessler comes onto the show to share a roadmap that she uses to help others understand what is truly going on for a neurodivergent individual. Her WHAT system, which stands for wellness, home, around me, and task, highlight the unseen systems that play a massive role in observable behavior and how others may interpret a person's behavior. Debra's training, not only as a nurse, but also as a clinical psychologist, give her such a unique perspective as a child and family advocate. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Debra Kessler, nurse and clinical psychologist, and really a very strong child and family advocate. Hi, Debra. How are you?
Good morning. So grateful to be here.
I'm so grateful for you to be here. Before we get into the nitty-gritty and the good stuff, not that you're not good, but the stuff that we're going to get into today, I wonder if you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'm a clinical psychologist and I've been in private practice for 20 years. And my specific orientation has been looking at kids with divergent nerve systems and who face challenges in the world that are often unseen, which cause a lot of challenges for them. And what I also bring to the table is being a nurse. So looking at all the things that are under the surface that really might help us bring more understanding and compassion and more effective support to these kiddos so they really can fulfill their potential.
It's such a great combination. I mean, in psychology, when we literally talk about the biopsychosocial aspects of a person, and who what are the main factors that really influence a person, you have not only the strong, training in the psychological and the social pieces, but in this biological piece, which I think, the more we work with divergent neurological systems anyway, or different neurological systems, the more we, I think, can't ignore the huge role of the biological neurological system.
I'm always orienting to it's about the process rather than the product. And there's so much focus on product outcome, productivity, compliance, these kinds of things. And it kind of hurts my heart because I think kids are doing the best they can with the systems that they have. And without helping them navigate the world through the lens of how they're wired, we're likely to cause more shame and distress and anxiety.
Yeah. And I see that, I see that in the adults that I work with. And I know that, you work with children and their families, and you see this as well. I see, by the time they get to me in their 20s, we already have some really severe burnout from this. And I love the way you put like kind of these unseen challenges, right? The differences in the neurological functioning are not something that you physically track right away. And so, you don't make those adjustments. If anything, I think sometimes there are automatic negative adjustments that get met from others looking or making judgments about a person, which really do lead to the true S word, right? The shame and the shoulds. Those are the true S words.
And the trauma, it really is what we'd call small t trauma that accumulates. And the idea that these kids are always trying to go through hoops to please others when the people around them who are supposed to nurture and help them live in the world, given the way they're wired, have missed. And it's very hard because the parents want to show up for these kids. It's not that they don't, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Debra, you have such a cool model or system for the way in which you understand your clients and help others understand your clients. I'm wondering if and then this is like really what I'm so excited about when we spoke offline, And I said to you, Debra, will you please come on to the show and talk about your pathway and your roadmaps to do this? You're like, absolutely. So I was so excited. But I wonder if you can share your roadmap, the way in which you help others understand themselves and others understand
Yeah.
those people.
Yeah. So, with that biological foundation, I did my nursing, back, I've been licensed as a nurse for like 30, 40 years. So that's deeply ingrained in me in terms of an understanding or a framework. And so when you start to look at us as biological systems, the foundation is our regulation. And when we talk about our regulation, that's things like our sleep, our digestion, our awareness of our internal organs. It also includes what we call our arousal curve or our autonomic nervous system, which really governs a lot of the regulation of our internal or hollow organs. And without understanding that, it makes it hard to understand the behavior that's showing up. Because if you have somebody whose system is always on fire or reactive or in pain, right, it's going to manifest in a lot of different ways, specifically for kids who don't have that capacity to reflect inside yet and know to express what's going on. So it leaves us from the outside to interpret. So those structures, that very deep brain system, is where I start. And then we also look at the other deep brain structures that are in relationship with the outside world, which is our sensory system, because the information from our sensory system tells us whether we're safe or not safe in the environment with what's going on. And as we honor that, we have to recognize that goes into the hypothalamus, which again is a subcortical structure. So these things are often hidden from overt awareness. And then we begin to add in the idea of the emotional interpretations and the meanings that are assigned to these experiences. And that's really what we call the relevance or the emotional system. And finally, all the pieces come together and how they support us to act and engage in the world, thinking about ourselves, thinking about others, executing tasks, meeting demands. And it's a lot for parents to take in all of that. But I got a little playful here and I decided to just change the names of these brain systems. And I call the regulation the wellness system, and the emotional system the home system, and the sensory system the around me system, and the executive function is the task. And it's so hard to do this just verbally, but essentially it allows parents to go, what is going on? WHAT, wellness, home, around me, and task. And I think the important part there is to key in to the multidimensional factors that might be contributing to what's showing up in the moment. So that's the foundation.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And so often we just see task.
Yes.
Right? That's really what I mean. Most often we see task. When you just identified 3 deeper unseen systems that play a huge role in task, right?
Yes.
And I love this idea of process, so often. And I mean, this is like, as I am squarely playing with IEPs, I feel like on a daily basis, the IEP goals or behavioral goals or whatever goals, and I understand the function of them. Like I understand that they need to be measured and they need to be objective and they need to be all those things. But what happens is we don't focus on the underlying systems or processes. And if we had done that, then actually the task or the objective would have been met. And so, these are things that I feel like we chase, and I call this behavior chasing, which I think, in the long run, chase our clients away and avoid or move away instead of into the world. And so this is like so interesting. Debra, how do you help parents or other people in the support system see the things that are unseen? Because, that's something that I think it can be really challenging, especially when, let's say I'm working with an autistic teen or adult, it's not uncommon for their parent to also be autistic. And so really
Yeah.
playing with the abstract, because it's abstract in so many ways. How do you help people who struggle with seeing abstractions or create
Right.
symbolism for things? How do you help them do this?
I really appreciate that point, and we all live in bodies. So the idea about can we experientially help everybody, parent, child, and caretakers, whether it's, teachers or teachers' assistants, etc., recognize what it is like when they are anxious, what's happening in their bodies. And sometimes I'll even use some biofeedback kinds of mechanisms like heart rate variability, which will make it more explicit that your heart rate is running faster and create
Mhm.
more internal awareness, right? So I think we do need to make it externalized so that we can appreciate and bring more connection. One of the key issues that I think is super important is interoception. So
Yeah.
interoception is a term that talks about the internal awareness of what's going on in our bodies. And if we don't recognize that we're on fire, or that our shoulders are up, or that our tummy is grinding, or we've got muscle tension, it's hard to really then link that up with a fear response, right? And then from there we can normalize that, okay, there is something in the environment that is activating and your body's doing what it's supposed to do to try to protect you from that. And where's that coming from, and how do we begin to engage with that differently? Is that
Yeah.
helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been other episodes on the podcast where we just specifically dump right into interoception. Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
that? And I think so often it is not an uncommon response for a lot of my adult clients to say, might ask them, "What do you want?"
Mm-hmm.
And when they have a really hard time answering that question, we end up getting down to interoception inevitably, where it's like, oh,
Interesting.
I don't ever feel hungry. I don't really get those signals.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like, how in the world would you even know what do you want?
Yeah.
So that idea of having a formalized process for self-reflection or internal reflection, then to add
Right.
words to it. But I often find, and I don't know if you find the same thing, where really getting help from some form of structure through a safe, encouraging, positive relationship then can
Mm-hmm.
allow those frameworks to be established for a person to then use for their own management.
First. Right. And as you were talking about before, we're so oriented toward task and outcome and product that we don't attend to the elements underneath which build up to that. And so being able to bring attention to those things will allow a little bit more scaffolding, right? And then you need the environment around to help scaffold, to build those steps underneath that were missed, right?
Yeah.
It's if we don't build the structure underneath, then how do we support, right, the larger goals?
Yeah, agreed. Yep. Go ahead.
So a lot of times I find it's about educating the parents to have some connection with their own goals that are sometimes overriding their awareness of what's happening within the child so that they can back up and slow down. Parents inevitably are so passionate for their children to do well, and at the same time are overwhelmed, and their own childhoods didn't really pay attention to those same things that the kids need them to pay attention to. So it's that whole connection first and validating. I find I spend a lot of time on slowing things down mindfully. Let's just observe what's going on and then validating. And a lot of people get confused. Validation is not agreeing. It's just acknowledging the experience as the other is having it. And from there, we can move into this place of acceptance that's compassionate around, oh my, of course it makes sense that you are overwhelmed when your kid throws stuff at you across the room and all you're trying to do is help them get dressed. That's so hard. And it makes so much sense. And your kiddo is overwhelmed and you're just trying to show up, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I'll do with parents that seems to work really well is to draw on the board one person over here, another person over here, and the rock in the middle. And I call the rock it. And this is essentially a power struggle. And whatever it is the essence that parents and children are in a conflict over. And once we get to this connection place of compassion and validation, we recognize that the parent can move behind the child to help orient the child into the rock, into the it that they have both been addressing, but from a different dynamic. And that seems to resonate really well with parents to hold on to.
Yeah, in so many ways, Deborah, empowerment, right? The empowerment of knowledge and awareness. I love that you spoke about that acknowledgement is not agreement. And so often, and again, the experience that I bring professionally, especially today when I'm working with adults, is that when those internal cues have not been validated,
Yeah.
what happens is the client does not trust their own
Yes.
signals.
Yes.
And now we're really awry because we have young people who are expected to
Yes.
manage themselves in X, Y, and Z ways.
Absolutely.
Um, and they have been denying their signals because they have been told that they are wrong, or they are, cumbersome, or they are irritating, or they are
Annoying.
demanding, or, fill in the blank, right?
Yes.
And that empowering a parent early on with a system, with a
Hmm.
way to think, not how, like
Yes.
not what to think, but a way to think, how to think about their kiddo and the influence they have in their environment.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
right, really is like such an empowering thing for not only the parent but also the child.
It goes back to that old saying, you can feed a man a fish and he'll eat for a day,
Yeah,
right? Or you can teach a
yeah,
man to fish.
right,
And when we keep telling a child what to do, or the other one is that I'm so proud of you. That's
yeah,
about you, the parent, right? It's how did you feel about what you did? What kind of effort did that take, right? What do you notice about that? Is really calling attention. So this is the next step, is that once we connect with the idea that there's a different wiring and it's the environment that is supposed to scaffold that wiring to make more sense, or to navigate the world with the way we're wired, is that reflection. So let's slow down and tease this apart. And I was thinking about this. I was watching a newscast, and there was an author about elite athletes. And what they do is they review everything that went wrong on a football field or in a basketball game. And they take that athlete through step by step. Well, same thing with our kids. If we take them through in a neutral way about, you were at Johnny's birthday party, and the next thing I know is that, you guys are scrambling, fighting on the floor. What happened? Whoa, we got to slow that way down and go, okay, you were at Johnny's birthday party. And then you got in the bounce house. And what did you notice in the bounce house? And what did Johnny do? And what was going on in your body? We have to slow all of that down. What did you think about that? How excited were you? Now we've got a deconstruction. And now we can reflect on hindsight what happened, to recognize, oh, when you're moving your body really fast and there's a lot of noise around you, and when things are exciting, you get really big in your body and you're just having so much fun, and you kind of lose track of maybe taking breaths, or right, you notice that you're full of energy and things just go, go, go. Now we're linking up in the present, cause and effect, so that the next birthday party this kiddo goes to, oh, bounce houses seem to be really exciting for you. Yeah, remember what happened? What would be our plan? What do you think we could do? How can we notice this together? Right? And then they become little experiments that are cooperative, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So I call that really the reflection stage. We look in the past to begin to look for trends or patterns. We come into the present to see if there's a cause and effect. And from that, we can generate some more informed ideas that are really supportive rather than judgmental or controlling. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's so interesting, Deborah, because I hear people say, I reflect, I reflect, I reflect. And, I
Mm,
remember, back in grad school when my mentor was teaching me how to reflect, it was actually very challenging. It's not an easy skill in the sense that it's not
mhm.
just parroting. It,
Right.
it isn't just I repeat what you say. And I think so often, and this is why many of my clients don't want to sit in their own IEPs, is
Mm,
because they're being spoken about when they're there
right.
versus this collaborative that you're talking about and this
Hmm.
this kind of safe space of exploration and
Yeah.
curiosity,
Yeah.
right? So it's difficult to go back and talk about something that was distressing,
Yes.
right? That
Yes.
needs to be done with so much care, and I think skill. That those
Yeah.
two things are so necessary in that reflection phase.
Well, this is where we toggle, right, between connection and reflection, because some things
Yeah.
have embedded themselves in that home system as shameful, or that I'm
Yeah.
damaged, or whatever negative self-appraisal has um, derived, from those experiences, as well as there's a void, right? Because they
Yeah.
haven't had somebody who um, really knew how to dig into the four brain systems, because once we start reflecting and recognize your body was just trying to protect yourself, that makes so much sense that you were
Yeah.
overwhelmed, right? So we have to toggle, right, between connection and reflection.
Yes.
And that's what
Yeah.
gets missed, is that we rush so fast to the end. And the biggest part is that regulation around being able to be present and not shame or blame your difference.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Shame or blame your difference. It's so true.
Hmm.
And that the person who is guiding this process must also
Hmm.
be aware of their own regulation so that they can hold the space, right? They
Yeah.
can hold that space. And I think that can be really challenging.
It can be, and I also like to give parents some permission to be authentic.
Hmm.
I love you so
Absolutely.
much, and I have my own worries about this, and I just want you to let
Yeah.
me know that those are mine, right? Because I
Yeah.
love you so much. So there is really about some context about what it is, and I've said, to my own kid, it's like, I've never done this before. I've never parented a kid who's 30, and it's like I may make some mistakes, right? And please know that my best intention, right, is to not
Yeah.
make mistakes.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I find myself in those situations a lot too with a teenager, parenting a teenager. So
Right.
I can resonate with that, Deborah. I can resonate. Um, what's so great, Deborah, is you have such a clear system, to help parents understand these interactive systems to
Yes.
inevitably what leads to the task, right?
Yes.
Inevitably what's
Yes.
leading to the task, right? And that's where so much is focused because it's what's getting measured. I feel like,
Well, it's outcome, it's output. That's what the school wants, but it just misses I like the word empowerment, but it misses the self-awareness and the
yeah,
self-management and the self-respect, right? And the
yeah,
development of autonomy,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 and that autonomy and agency are
Hmm.
really foundationally housed in self-awareness. Um,
Absolutely.
because if we're talking about self-mastery or efficacy, right, which
Hmm.
I think are other words that swim in the autonomy agency word pool, right, that it's really based on action, the action, right, the actions of like I know myself and
Yes.
I believe that I can act upon what I need and
Yes.
what I'm feeling, right? That I can trust myself. I can rely on myself. And I'm
Yes.
not saying this because I expect everyone to feel alone or do things by themselves. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I can rely on myself, even if that means I need to ask for help, right?
Yes.
Right. But I love this idea of, with my clients, we talk about habitats and thriving.
Mm,
And that, we say, we get this with plants and animals all the time. Like we understand very clearly that plants and animals need very specific habitats in which to thrive,
I like
that
that.
human beings are not much different. It's just that we all have preferences in
Yes.
how we recharge our batteries, what depletes us, what triggers us, what overwhelms us, and how we become overwhelmed. And inevitably, all of your WHA systems like,
Right?
right
Right?
there. I love that WHAT, what is going on, wellness, home around me, task.
Yeah, it's really helpful to reorient and get out of that immediate reactivity we might have,
Yeah.
right? That we can sit back and be a little bit more curious, but we have to take our foot off our own gas in terms of our fire alarm going off that, my kid is embarrassing me. They're having a meltdown in the middle of a restaurant or
Yeah.
whatever. And that can be very, very hard. And I think this also travels along two paths. One is once there is a challenge and a hidden challenge identified, there's a certain amount of knowing whether you're the kind of person who wants to go to Disneyland and get on all of those really fast rides, or you're the person who wants to go for a hike, right, at the beach, right? That is a personal choice. And if when you are in environments that you do not have choice about, right, about the environment and the behavior of others, how you can self manage. So, sitting in the
Yeah.
back of a movie theater, wearing noise canceling headphones, taking breaks, drinking water. There are so many elements that we can govern for ourselves that would make less easy environments more tolerable, right? And so it's a both and and.
Yeah, agreed. And that, how about choice and consent in the sense that there are some times when I need to be environments that don't suit me or fit me well,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's my choice that I'm in that environment.
Yes.
Um, I think the piece that I see a lot of times is the conversation, and you know, um, and most of my clients, are preparing to launch into adulthood, or they are
Mm-hmm.
adults already. But oftentimes those goals surround things like, or I'll hear things like, adulting is hard. And there's a lot of things that we have to do in adulting that we don't want to do. So this is just part of that for this person. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess my response there is I totally get that. But, most of us, or a lot of us, most of our life is okay, right? Like, and most of it is comfortable in the sense that we are okay in those environments. And so when we're asked to do the things that are difficult, we can do
Mm-hmm.
those because we've got something left in the tank and there's meaning surrounding what we're doing. If I think about my job, I love what I do. I don't
Yeah.
particularly like to write. I don't particularly like bureaucracy, but I do put
Mm-hmm.
up with those things because they're a smaller percentage of what I do
Right.
in the midst of the stuff I love to do,
Yeah.
which, right, is a bigger
Yeah.
part. But when we're asking our clients to be in environments and doing things that don't have a lot of meaning for them, and in an uncomfortable environments that are highly pressured for them most of the time, I think that proportion is off. And so it's then hard. It's like I feel like the conversation or the argument of, well, they need to learn to do things that they didn't want to do. I want to say to them, they've already done that most of their life, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we flip that and add meaning, to the schedule? How do we add meaning to, right, to what's happening? And
Yeah.
so I see that a lot in transition, actually, where
Yeah.
we're expecting quite a bit, but we're not thinking about the biological or the nervous system, actually, at all.
I think that goes back to some really early stuff about connection and joy, right?
Yeah.
And helping an individual find out when they are at peace, what does feel good. And a lot of what happens today is there's so much escapism, right? And high stimulation with the internet and all of the things that they can access. And it's kind of like if you taste strawberry, imitation strawberry flavoring, and you eat a strawberry, they're not the same, right? And that becomes very difficult, is how to make the world of reality rewarding. And a lot of it can be that everything is really stimulating, and how to get back into connection and engagement and figuring out in the world what feeds you. Right. And that's
Yeah.
a very difficult trap these days. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that's easy. And
Yeah.
that is a journey. And sometimes we have to really look at the role of technology in these kiddos' lives and how much it is really kind of consuming most of their time.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is like just another, it's like another episode, Deborah. We could probably have a whole new episode
Yes.
just on that. But, um, Deborah, you're kind of you're in this place where you're helping kids, and it sounds like you're really helping children and their families, like at early on. So you're really working with family systems, would you say?
My goal is that we get to it as early as possible, because the
Yeah.
trajectory is much harder. It's harder to bend that curve when there's been more experience that's been, challenging and frustrating for everybody. So I would love to bend that curve earlier. But that doesn't
Yeah.
always happen. So many of our kids are under-identified, and
Yeah.
particularly the twice exceptional kids who are really able to sort of muscle their way through and have incredible memory, so they can do all that early elementary school work, and then they get to
Yeah.
junior and high school and they have to start doing more abstract work. And that's when we start to see wheels fall off, because there's another developmental hurdle and the social dynamics are more complex. So, whenever they show up, we're happy.
Yeah, yeah, I find that too. I see that, and I see that also in the under-identification of girls and women.
Ah,
Just because
yeah,
our systems up to this point have been very male focused, just in the norming, and so
yeah,
there is a different expression, and we see way more masking in girls and women than in males,
yeah.
and so I see that quite a bit, and I think you're right with the 2E piece, or even this. I think where like ADHD or this autism ADHD overlap is
Mm-hmm.
also, we're seeing that kind of later and later as well. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Hey, Deborah, if there's a family out there, or there's someone out there who's like, oh my goodness, this would be so great, to work with Deborah, to find out more about how to do this, to understand this. What are the best ways for a family or a person to get a hold of you?
So I have a website, and it's very simple. It's drdebrakessler.com. I just very direct, right? And I try to share blogs that I've written there, and certainly there's information about my background. And I'm also in the process of trying to pull some of these ideas together into a book. It is a rather complex thing because it's layered, it's multifaceted. But I'm actually beginning to look at running parent support groups. So I think we need communities out there of people who know a language and could support each other. I think that's one of the biggest prices parents pay, is they feel isolated. They don't have clusters of others who know that journey. And I think that's a real loss. That's a real loss.
Yeah.
So they can reach out through my email on my website, and I'm certainly happy to consult and offer what I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for being here, for sharing your expertise and your talent, and for being in the space. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, and my best to you and all the families out there who are navigating these really challenging waters.